Hello YouTube! Time for a more light-hearted video, at least it is intended as a light-hearted video. I am not trying to offend anyone, but of course as a disclaimer I have to say this video is not intended to be offensive. Of course some of you guys are going to be offended because that is the world we live in now. Everybody is offended by everything all the time, and of course someone is going to have to leave me a message letting me know just how incredibly offensive what I said and what I thought was, and how it completely ruined their day, and how they wish I had a horrible life and died excruciatingly because of my horrible opinions. But again, that is not the point of this video. It's just supposed to be kind of lighthearted, even though I'm going to say things that are maybe negative. But these things that I'm saying, they neither mean that I like or dislike or agree or disagree. These are just observations that I've made. So what is this video about today? You probably are wondering. Here it is. I am going to talk about what were the biggest cultural shocks for me in every part of the world that I've lived in. So just for those of you guys who don't know, who are maybe new to my channel, I'm from Germany. So I guess Germany is considered Middle Europe? No, that's not what you guys call it in English. Central Europe. I kind of think I would say that I have kind of a Northern European background, mentality, culture in the way that I think and see things. So I am applying my Northern European culture, idea, mentality, ethics that I was raised with to talk about the things that were the most surprising, shocking, could be positive, could be negative, could be something that initially I thought was negative and then come to have really liked, and vice versa in the other parts of the world that I've lived in. As of now, I have lived in every continent outside of Australia, Oceania, or whatever it's called, and Antarctica, which of course, nobody lives there. So again, disclaimers, of course, when I say these are the things that surprised me about Asia, these are the things that surprised me about the Middle East, yada, yada, of course, there's different countries and there's different cultures and it's not monolithic, okay? Like I'm trying to say, this is not supposed to be a super serious video, okay? I'm talking generalities, I'm talking things that just kind of I came to notice that were pervasive in that part of the world, in some countries more, in some countries less. Yeah. Anyway, and I'm going to go in the order of how I lived in other parts of the world. So we're going to start with North America. Obviously, for many, many years, I lived in the US. This is probably part of the reason why everyone's always like, you're an American. Actually, just like 2 days ago, somebody else was like, you're an American. You have an American accent. And I'm like, okay, I'm American. So the first culture shock I had when I first moved to the US was in Germany and in several other European countries. In Germany especially, water is very expensive. So, when I was growing up, it was still very normal to have, family wash days and clothing wash days and all this kind of stuff because water it's just very expensive. And so one of the things that was completely normal, and I can't think of anybody growing up that didn't do this, is that I had the same school outfit Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I had a different outfit for Thursday, Friday. The only thing that was changed on a regular basis was like underwear, socks, maybe not even like a t-shirt or something was changed on a regular basis. Like that's just, also Germany is a relatively cold country, so it's not like you're sweating or anything like that. So it just wasn't common to change your clothes every day. So when I first moved to the US, I kept doing what I've always been doing. And I remember that boy, I guess at the time, because I was very young, who was actually in my English class, who I had a kind of a crush on. Uh, he at one point, like, I was, because I sat in front of him, and he like tapped me on the shoulder, and he's like, isn't that the same sweater that you've worn like the last 2 days? And I was like, yeah. And then he like ridiculed me in front of the whole class. Like he was like, "Oh, you're dirty, you're nasty," and like everybody in class was like laughing at me. So first culture shock I had in the U.S. was that I wasn't aware that in the U.S. people literally have a different outfit for every single day of the week. Like that was not part of my culture, and it's actually something I still don't do because I'm like, I don't know what other people are doing. That if they're, I mean, like obviously your underclothes, but like I'm like, I'm not like jogging in my sweater or rolling around in the mud to where I have to wash my sweater after one time wearing. Um, the second thing that I noticed about the US, and it's something that on one hand I actually really like, and on the other hand I really didn't like. And that is that I feel Northern Americans maybe more so than Canadians, but Canadians also, is they're incredibly disingenuous, super disingenuous people. And what I mean by that is this: you meet them, and it's just kind of like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I love your outfit. Oh my god, your shoes, they're amazing. Oh my god, did you just get your haircut? You look so great. I love the way that you talk. And oh my god, and oh, we should do this. And oh my god, you're my new best friend, and we should talk all the time. And we're, you know what I mean? Like this is so very American to act like that, and everyone's your best friend like after 10 minutes, and you know what I mean? And then after 2 weeks, you never hear from this person again. And I don't think that it's done to be, because here's the first thing where I know people are going to be offended. I don't think it's something that is done purposely to be disingenuous. I just think it's part of the culture there. Uh, and in some ways, like I said, I actually really liked it. Like I actually way prefer it. Like I way prefer to go shopping in America than I ever did in Germany. Because if I'm going to meet somebody on a superficial level, like a sales clerk or the barista at Starbucks or something like that, I will openly admit I prefer that they're friendly, even if it's completely disingenuous. It's like you go into a store in the US and you walk in and they're like, "Hi, how you doing? You want to know about our greatest new sales? What are you looking for? Hey, can I show you these things over there?" Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's like you created like this weird short-lived friendship with like the sales clerk, and it's like obviously it's completely fake. They couldn't care less about you one way or the other. But like it's nice to go into a store and have a nice upbeat person dealing with you rather than like in Germany. It's like you walk into a store and the salespeople literally act like they're doing you a favor to even just ring up your clothes. I mean, you're walking around like 10 minutes like, could somebody tell me if I can get this in a different size? And they're like, oh, but ich habe Pause, like I'm on break. I can't help you right now. They're super unfriendly. And so in that way, I actually prefer it in the US. But in terms of making real friendships, I have to say I found that really difficult in the US. Because people are just so incredibly disingenuous in those kind of things. Like it's just this, you know, constantly telling you to your face that they like you and that you're great and that you're amazing and that you're beautiful and that like you have the greatest outfit and all this kind of stuff. And then behind your back, they just rip you to shreds. And they're like, "Oh my god, that T-shirt he was wearing, oh, that's such a terrible color." It's like, "Oh my god, you look amazing. I'm so glad you're here." So in terms of like real friendship, I find that more difficult in the US than I would in Europe. And the third thing that I think was it took me a while now. I have a bit of a different opinion on it, but when I first moved to the US, I was very negatively shocked. And it's still something that when I watch, especially a lot of American content on YouTube, like I don't have TikTok, but if like somebody that's like a political pundit I watch, if they put up a video about like Americans doing TikTok, there's always a bit of part of me that is, in German we have this word called Fremdschämen, where it's like you're embarrassed for another person for the way like maybe they act or the things they say, where you're just like, oh, like I actually feel embarrassed for you. And I actually a lot of times felt like that when I was in America, because the amount of ignorance Americans have when it comes to anything outside of America was always something that was it was just so incredibly shocking to me in the very beginning, and it really frustrated me in the beginning because just the vast majority of Americans that I met in America, uh, their worldview literally stops at the borders of America. I mean, it's like literally like flat earthers that think like, okay, the moment you leave America, you're just gonna fall off the planet. Like there's just all the concepts they have in terms of how they think about racism and sexism and classism and homophobia and capitalism and everything like that. It literally does not. They have no concept of how cultures and ideas and beliefs and interactions of people anywhere else in the world work. It's just it's one of the things that you guys know that frustrates me, because so many of my videos I'm always saying like white people are not monolithic, gay people are not monolithic, trans people are not monolithic, and Americans definitely have that viewpoint. It's kind of like all white people are like this, all black people are like this, all gay people are like this, and it was something that, like I said in the beginning, really just was like a red flag for me. I've come to feel a little bit more apologetic for Americans when it comes to this, and I've actually defended Americans because as soon as I went back to Germany and just in Europe, Europeans you meet, this is something that Europeans in general really criticize a lot about Americans. It's a general, not a dislike we have of Americans, but just a general like, oh, Americans, this complete ignorance of how anything outside of America works. But I found myself defending Americans a lot more after I moved back to Germany, and it's because I think something that like Europeans, it's hard for us to grasp is that America is so big, right? In a way, to be European and to be well traveled is actually almost like, yeah, so I mean, you could sneeze and be in a different country. Like all the countries in Europe are incredibly small. Even Germany, even though on the map it looks huge, Germany is only half the size of Texas. So, it's easy to be more cultured and to be more aware of the rest of the world when within a couple of hours you can be in a different culture in a different country and all this kind of stuff. And in the US, it's like you could literally fly from the West Coast to the East Coast and be on a plane for like 6 or 7 hours, and you're still in America. So I think it's a lot easier for Americans to be in a bubble when it comes to culture, because it's a lot harder for them to get anywhere. So, but yeah, that was something that really, when I first moved to the US, I really was just like, oh my God, like you guys have no idea how the rest of the world works. Like, just be quiet. Okay, the next place in the world I moved was in Asia. In Asia, I lived first in Thailand and then in Japan. And the first thing that I have to say this is something I really, really, really love about Asia, and this is something that is pretty pervasive in Asia or everywhere, probably with the extreme being in Japan, is that they are so incredibly considerate of other people. And it's definitely a part of the world where people are very cognizant of the fact that, hey, I need to take away a little bit of the self for the good of the community and the good of the group, right? So it's like, that's something that a lot of travelers and people that aren't from Asia, that go to Asia, will say. It's kind of like, you get on the metro system or on the bus system, nobody is talking really loud or blasting their music or, having phone conversations or, it's like, and people are just considerate and being quiet and minding their own business. They're not being lewd and gross. Like if you ever go into the Western world, if you go on the public transit, it's disgusting. Like you see like homeless people peeing and barfing on the thing, and women fighting with their boyfriends and making out, and it's just really nasty. And that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Asia. They're just really considerate of others. It comes at the expense of other things like individuality to some degree, but it's still something that is a very pleasant experience to have. The other thing that I really loved about Asia, this is more specific to Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, Thailand, these people are just genuinely kind and friendly and happy. It's actually really because, like, I mean, like, if you know anything about Germans and our reputation, is like we are a grumpy, angry people. Like we don't smile. Like I think that's kind of like just in general of like Northern European. Actually, I don't know if that's all Northern Europeans, but like also like Russians and maybe the Balkan states kind of have this reputation. Like it's just like we're just a little bit more like, you know. And living in Southeast Asia, it was just I just found that so pleasant to be around. How these people are legitimately they just seem happy with life. You know what I mean? Even though they have very little, it's just this feeling of community and family and being happy for the things you have and being grateful and smiling and just genuinely liking people and being friendly. Like I love that about Southeast Asia. I think that especially yeah, when I was living in Thailand, I just was like, I fell in love with like every person in Thailand. I was like, you guys are all just so sweet and nice and friendly and outgoing and helpful and kind and they didn't hold a grudge. It was just I don't know, that just really was a very pleasant thing for me to experience. And the third thing, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit vulgar, I have to say that there is a general stereotype that Asian men are both generally passive and that they are generally, well, I don't know how to say it in a non-vulgar way, that they have a small dick. And I have to actually tell you guys that really depends on the region of Asia. Uh, Way back when I first started traveling, I actually considered in my traveling blog to add a portion where I would say this country seems to have a lot of tops and not as many bottoms. This country seems to have a lot of bottoms. This country seems to have a lot of guys that are very buff and have a big dick. And this is a country where people seem to be more passive and have a small dick and stuff like that. Because it's weird, but it's actually a thing. Like it really is a thing. I have been and traveled and lived in countries where I'm like, this country has so many people who are tops. And then I'll go to another country and I'm like, oh my God, everybody is bottom. Like here's a really quick example. But like the first country I moved to was Greece. Greece is all bottoms. Like, of course, not all bottoms, but the vast majority of Greek men, bottoms. The neighboring country, Turkey, vast majority are tops. Like, and I don't know where that comes from. I'm sure I don't know, but like, and that's also kind of in Asia. And the one point I'm trying to get to is like, I gotta tell you guys, like southern China, Taiwan, there is a lot of tops in that. Like China in general, like there's a lot of tops. Taiwan, a lot of tops, and a lot of Asian men who do not fit the stereotype of having a small one. So that's definitely something. Yeah. But then I have to say again, China, I would say a lot of people identify tops. Japan, all bottoms. All of them bottoms. So I don't know how that happens. Like it's kind of a weird phenomenon. Okay. The third part of the world I lived in is Africa. Africa, I actually had a lot of cultural shocks. A lot of culture shocks. I'm trying to only do like 3 for each country, but there's definitely more. And the first culture shock, I would say, for Africa, I think this is something that really changed my viewpoint in terms of how I think and feel about how a lot of other people talk about Africa, especially people who've never been to Africa. Africa to me was a really interesting example of how you cannot superimpose your own culture onto another people. What I mean by that is, because I went to Africa as a volunteer, I was a volunteer teacher there, and it was an interesting experience because it's kind of like I went there with the idea that because I actually had to pay for doing it. It was like, actually, concerning it's called volunteer, and it's like it shouldn't be called volunteer because I had to pay. Or I should also say that a lot of people on my YouTube channel, I created GoFundMe, and a lot of people donated and actually made it possible for me to do that, because at the time I didn't have a lot of money, and I was able to pay the fees to do the volunteer work. I think probably a little bit more than half was paid by subscribers. So thank you again if you are one of those people. And but like I went there with thinking that what was going to be the thing that the people cared about most was my actual volunteer work and the quote unquote knowledge of teaching that I was going to bring in to this school. And it turned out they didn't care at all. They didn't care at all. Like, I could have literally not even gone to the school at all, and they wouldn't have cared whatsoever. It was purely the money that was paid for me to do this. I almost felt like the volunteer aspect is something that the African people were just kind of like, let's let that stupid white boy volunteer so he can feel like he's a good person, even though they didn't give a shit about it at all. Like, it didn't I don't think I really made a big impact there. There was like 2 or 3 kids that I was frantically, before I was leaving Tanzania, frantically trying to find a private sponsor for so they could go to a private school because they were highly gifted. But like, nobody cared. Not like the school coordinators, nobody cared to help these kids. Like, it was just, and so it was kind of like, the way I would explain it is, let's say you would go to Africa and you're thinking, okay, I want to do something good for these people, so I'm going to donate a tractor. This is not an example I've used, but it's a very true example. I forget who was the first one to make this, but it's absolutely true that this is the mentality and the culture of in Africa. So you buy a tractor for this African village, thinking, look, now it will save you guys a lot of time in doing your farming. You will have more time to do something else. And then you return a week later, and instead of using the tractor for farming, they've literally disassembled it and sold its parts so that they could get an immediate cash flow. And I think and like, the point I'm trying to make is, in terms of just the culture of Africa, it changed my opinion on how we the Western world should try to help Africa. And I've come away with it now where I'm like, I don't think sending volunteers there helps. I don't think sending money to Africa helps. I don't think sending machinery and stuff to Africa helps, because the mentality is so short-term thinking. That's just their mentality. I don't want to say that it's good or bad before anybody freaks out on me, but that is just the mentality of of Africans. It's kind of like, I will do what will get me through today, and tomorrow is a different problem. And then tomorrow I will do what will get me through tomorrow. There's no like, okay, if today I spend a little less money, in 3 years I could maybe buy a plow, and then in 6 years I can buy a tractor, and then 12 years I can buy that just doesn't exist there. And yeah, I think it was initially, because obviously it's so different from my own culture. When I first got there, I found it very, I don't know what the right word is. It shocked me, and it kind of like put me off, because I was kind of like, in a way, it made me feel like Africa is just a big black hole, where the world could indefinitely just send stuff and food and everything, and it's just going to get sucked up, because because like I said, it's a culture that doesn't do the long-term planning and thinking. They don't see the utility of long-term planning and thinking. So it just kind of made me go like, the idea of how to help Africa move forward and become a better and wealthier place, the thinking of the West, if we truly want to help Africa in that, has to completely change. Now, to backpack on that, um, at the same time, I have to say I actually was really surprised how innovative and creative people in Africa were, because of the lack of long-term planning. Like, okay, maybe we should pave these roads so that we have a smoother and easier way to get around in this town or in this city. Well, they're like, well, that's long-term planning. We're not going to do that. We'd rather take the money and buy something that'll give us pleasure today. At the same time, then they have all these really creative workarounds to fix problems that are created because there's no long-term planning. In terms of, where I was living, if all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's no water because we didn't think to buy pipes that don't have holes in them, and then all of a sudden somebody comes along and they just have this really creative solution to, I don't know, take like mud and spit in it and then like add like cement to it and plug up the holes, and within like 20 minutes all of a sudden the water works again. So in that way it's actually really interesting how creative and great they are at problem solving. So that was something else that I thought was really, that kind of came out of them having a very short-term thinking culture in that sense. And the third thing that I think, I don't want to say this surprised me, but maybe it did surprise me, because obviously I just said I had lived in the US before I lived in Africa. And in Germany we don't have black people. I don't recall having ever seen a black person until I was probably a teenager or something. And my general exposure to black culture, as far as there is such a thing, like I said, black people aren't monolithic, was in the US. And in the US, something that you're constantly bombarded with is this notion of white privilege, and black people are told that they're ugly, and that that European features and European looks and European style is what everybody wants and everybody looks up to, and black people are ashamed for their hair and all this kind of stuff. And within reason, I would agree with that in the US. But after being fed this idea that black people were raised to idolize white features and white people and think they're just the most beautiful thing and hate their own features, I actually have to say, in Africa, African people don't give two shits about white people in terms of dating them, being attracted to them. The vast majority of black or African people that I met, full on were like, I'm not attracted to white people. I like black features. I like especially the gay men I met in Africa. I'm actually saying this because I think it's cool. I've never been as unpopular anywhere as I was in Africa. Like, being white in no way, shape, or form put me in a position where people are like, ooh, a white guy, I want to date him. On the contrary, like, the vast majority of gay black men I met in Africa were like, I'm not into white guys. Like, sorry, I'm not into white guys. I was like, ooh, because like I always said, like, dark features, dark skin for me is just like, woo, you know what I mean? And they were just not having it. And so, like, it's something that now I just completely reject this idea that of black people monolithically feel like white people and white culture and white ideals are more beautiful than their own, because that is not the way it is in Africa at all. African people absolutely prefer their own, which I think is very healthy and great, like, more power to you. Yeah, so I just thought that was something that, again, really shifted. I was kind of like, I just, again, gained a little something and learned a little something in terms of how the world works, and again, why we are not monolithic, Sorry. Okay, after Africa, the next place I lived was the Middle East. I don't want to get into the whole debate about, like, the Middle East is not a continent, the Middle East, and what belongs to the Middle East and what doesn't belong to the Middle East. I made a whole video where I talked about traveling in the Middle East and how I define the Middle East. So I'm not going to argue with people about this anymore. I don't want to hear your comments with like that place is not part of the Middle East and this is and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Go watch that video if you're interested. If not, don't even bother leaving me your comments. In my opinion, I lived in 2 countries in the Middle East. I lived in Azerbaijan and I lived in Saudi Arabia. The first thing that I would say in general really surprised me about living in the Middle East, because it's so counter what we are told about what the Middle East is God, Middle East is so gay. It's so gay. I literally just said in Africa, there was just nobody interested in me in Africa. Like, not nobody, you know, I think I went on like a couple of dates. But like in general, I was definitely not in any way, shape, or form hold high regard or interest or anything like that. Completely the opposite in the Middle East, the vast majority of the Middle East. Like I couldn't walk 10 feet without getting a dick in my mouth. I mean, like, sorry, that sounds really vulgar. But like, it was just, it is just, I don't think I've ever been anywhere in the world I've been this popular. I mean, like, the offers to give me dick were just everywhere, all the time. I mean, walking down the street, guys come up to you and they're like, hey, do you want to hook up? You go to the supermarket, you go to the restaurant, people just like randomly like pass you their numbers, or they just grab you and like are just like, oh, hey, let's fuck, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the first thing. It's kind of like they try so hard to make it seem like homosexuality doesn't exist in the Middle East, but that is such BS. It's everywhere. It is everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. I have to honestly say, from everywhere I've been in the world, the least gay place I've ever been is definitely Africa. Like, it's also the most homophobic part of the world. Way more homophobic than the Middle East. But yeah, Middle East, super gay. The other thing I have to say that I think this is probably not going to be true for women, but like, or maybe, I don't know, but because there's such a separation of men and women in those cultures. But like, I have to say, at least the Gulf countries, and maybe also like the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern countries like Lebanon and stuff, the people are so incredibly hospitable. Like, this is something I didn't have any foreknowledge about whatsoever. So I was just really like, because, you know, we are so fed this idea of Middle Easterners and terrorists, and they hate Westerners and all this kind of stuff, and it's the complete opposite. I mean, the like, people were so happy to interact with me, both for trying to hook up and just in general because they're just happy like to meet foreigners, because it's a part of the world where there's just not a lot of tourism for understandable reasons. But I mean, just being invited to tea, being invited to dinner, being invited to meet their family, which normally meant only the men, of course, you know, to barbecue, to go out camping with them, like, again, sometimes because they were trying to have sex with you, but like, it just in general, just the amount of just, you know, openness and friendliness and kind and wanting to help go like tell you things about their culture and show you parts about their culture, that really blew me away about the Middle East. Like, I don't think I've ever been in a part of the world where I think people have been more just full on hospitable and really mean it and like it and enjoy it. Middle Eastern people love playing host to other people. Like, it's like this great honor to like have people and, you know, feed them and bring them tea and all this kind of stuff. So that is really cool. And the third thing, and this is actually something that really kind of annoyed me. To this day, I cannot get over how cheap water is in the Middle East. I mean, it is so cheap. So cheap. I mean, here you are in the desert where there's no water, and buying water super dirt cheap. Which that part I can probably understand, because they're probably like, people need to hydrate. We need to make sure people are hydrating or something. But like, even I remember like in so many parts of the Middle East where I've traveled, you would see them watering what little bit of plant life was able to exist in the middle of the day. And I'm kind of like, I was like, everything you're doing, this is literally just wasted water. Like, it's going to evaporate instantaneously. And it's just, the water is just going and going and going. Or like in Saudi, like you would see like broken water pipes and water's just gushing out and gushing out. And like, that wouldn't get fixed for days and days. And I was like, you're in a desert. There's literally no water. And water is so cheap. The water bill for showering and everything, it was negligible. Like after 1 month, it was like $3 or something like that. And the reason that frustrated me is like coming from Germany, we have access to an ocean, we have lakes, we have rivers, we have streams, we have little ponds, we have rain all the time. It rains all the time in Germany. We have thermal water. I mean, like, Germany is basically like water world. It's just water, water, water. And water is so insanely expensive. It's so extremely expensive. I was raised, when you take a shower, you turn on the water, you get yourself wet, you turn off the water, you lather up, and then you turn on the water again and shower it off, because water is so expensive. You can't just let the water run. And I'm just like, there's just some, that I don't know, to this day, that is just absolutely mind-boggling to me, because I'm like, how can that be that a country that is basically almost submerged in water, it be so expensive, and then in countries where water is scarce as possible, it's just nothing. Like, I don't know. Okay, wow, this has been a really long video already. And now I just moved to South America. I'm in Ecuador now. I obviously haven't traveled as extensively in South America as I want to yet, but I've been to a couple of countries now. And so these are just like the initial things that really stuck out to me, that kind of surprised me. The first I'm going to say is, again, I am more and more having distrust for mainstream media. Because like I said, how they represent the Middle East as everybody being terrorists, and then like they're actually all super friendly and they really like foreigners and all this kind of stuff. I kind of was like, okay, that's a complete lie how they make the Middle East out to be. And I also have to say, I am actually really surprised, because South America is in general in the media portrayed as so ridiculously dangerous. Like, it's like the moment you walk out on the street, you're gonna get shot down by some cartel, or you're gonna get mugged or something like that. And I actually have to say, so far, all the places I've been, even like Colombia, I'm walking with my phone out, I'm taking pictures. It's never been an issue. I mean, like, oh, knock on wood, of course, tomorrow I might have somebody mug me or something like that. And I'm not saying it's something that doesn't exist, but overall, it's way, way more calm and peaceful. And just, if you are just take really normal precautions, that is just something that I've just not encountered in South America yet at all. The second thing, and this is so going to trigger people, so I'm going to already give a little disclaimer. Yes, I am well aware that South America, the main language is Spanish or Portuguese, for Brazil. And as such, that is going to be the language that everyone's going to speak. So the thing I'm going to say now is, I have to say I have been incredibly, incredibly frustrated at the complete lack of English anywhere I've been in South America so far. I'm sorry. Yes, I know. I can already tell people. I can already see people's fingers like going like, they don't have to speak English. It's South America. And I'm like, I get that. Okay, chill out. But I'm sorry. It is 2021. English is by default the world language. You can like it or you can dislike it, but that's just the way it is. It is the language of travel. It is the world language of commerce. It is the language of politics. It is the language that is used as the common denominator worldwide, like it or not. And I'm sorry, if you are under the age of 30, maybe even under the age of 40, I just expect people to have a baseline of English. I do. I'm sorry. And I don't care if that triggers you or that upsets you. I just do. And in the countries I've been to in South America so far, it's just nobody speaks English. Nobody speaks English. At the international airport, the people working the counter do not speak English. I have a problem with that. I'm sorry. That to me is just that is to me a complete crazy cultural shock. The only other place where I've ever seen such a lack of English was actually Japan. And it actually it was a complete culture shock to me there too. I was kind of like, how can a first world nation like Japan have such low level English? Like, I'm sorry, to me that is just basic. To me, at this point in time in world history, having a baseline of English is just having like basic math skills. I'm sorry, to me, it should just be an absolute requirement to live in a globalized world now. I mean, like all the movies, like I said, all the politics, everything is done in English. So yes, I'm in the process of learning like the basics I need for Spanish, because obviously I need to survive and nobody speaks English, so I have to do it in order to get around. But still, I'm just kind of like, I was just like, when I came back from Bolivia, there was not one person at the international airport in La Paz who spoke English. Not one. And I'm sorry, yeah, it did. I just literally was like, I cannot. And the third thing, and this is also going to set some people off, and it's definitely going to offend people, but whatever, that's what my channel is. The third thing is, I think, especially Northern European, which I lump Central Europe with Northern Europe in terms of culture. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty similar. Northern European women are not very showy in terms of how they dress. Of course, if they're going to the club or the occasional date or something like that, they might wear something a little bit more revealing, more tight. But overall, in Northern Europe, you're going to be pretty hard-pressed to just see a random woman in her day-to-day activities walking around with like a shirt where her tits are all out and a mini skirt or super high heels. Maybe more in Eastern Europe. That's going to trigger maybe one of my new subscribers. But in Western and Northern Europe, Southern Europe and Eastern Europe, you might see that. But in Northern Europe, it's just not something that is very common because of the way our women think about women's rights and liberation. It's just not part of our culture. And then after all those years of living in the Middle East, where women obviously are completely covered up, I have to say, coming to South America, it has been really, what is the word I'm looking for? Interesting. And I'm sorry I'm going to use this word. I'm sorry it's going to trigger a lot of you guys. It's going to offend you a lot of you guys, but I can't say it, and I can't think of a nicer way to say it because it's simply the truth. I find it really interesting how absolutely slutty women in South America walk around. I mean slutty. I'm sorry, it's slutty. I mean super tight, cut down to here. I mean literally one false step and that nipple's popping out. Then the belly is out, the butt is out, super short shorts, hooker heels. I'm sorry, like outside of South America, I have never seen a woman who is not a stripper walk around in clear, like see-through, like plastic or glass heels. Like to me, I just completely associate that with strippers. Like I've never seen regular women wear heels like that. And here it's like, I just, the first time was literally the first week I was here. I was at the supermarket that's just like right on the other side of the block from where I live. And this woman, I'm assuming it was her kid, so I'm assuming she's a mother. It's Sunday morning at like 8 a.m. and this woman, hooker heels, clear heels, see-through, like fishnet pantyhose like super short jeans, like a gold top where like her boobs were just, I mean, full drag makeup, you know, and I just was like, I'm not saying these women are sluts, but I'm just saying I think it's definitely South America is definitely a part of the world where the women they show that they're women. Like they're proud. They're proud of their titties. They're proud of their ass. They're proud. They're proud of it. And they will show it like no problem. But it's definitely something not being my culture and not being something that I've seen a lot in the last couple of years. It's definitely probably at least once or twice a week. I'm kind of like, wow, kudos to you for having the courage to wear that in public. And even like they wear it in professional settings. I think that's even more where it's just like so surprising to me. Like you go to the bank and the bank teller, I mean, like, it's literally like, why are you even bothering wearing a top at all? I mean, like your boobs are you're basically topless, you know? And I'm like, is this appropriate at the bank? Like, I don't know. Like, it's a little bit strange. Okay, I'm done with this list. Hopefully, you guys can see a little bit of the humor in it. Probably not. You know, why see something as funny when you can be offended? So leave me all your I'm offended and I hate you and you don't know anything comments at the bottom. And yeah, take care. Bye.